Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and what a delight and an honor to have back with us today Chris Mitchell. He's the Middle East Bureau Chief for CBN News, and he's also the host of Jerusalem Dateline, which you see here on the Dove TV network. He's authored several books, and hopefully you've read them. Destination Jerusalem, ISIS, Convert or Die, Christian Persecution, and Preparing for the Days Ahead. And there's a guy that's in the know, so what a delight to hook up with him today. Hi, Chris. Good to see you, friend.
Hey, Perry. Great to be with you again.
Wow, a lot going on. Hey, first of all, your take on what happened in Paris with the three Americans thwarting that terrorist attack on the train.
Well, eventually, this was a good story in the world against and the war against Islamic terrorism. Thank goodness for the and thank God for the quick thinking of the three Marines that subdued this guy. And it could have been a bloodbath. It just sort of exposes the idea that there are soft targets all over Europe. There's about 40 million people that go on trains a day. There's about 100,000 trains in operation throughout Europe. And so, God forbid anything else like this happens. But it does expose and possible copycat attacks again after this. And also in the United States, people need to be aware the trains are not the most highly secure places, unlike airports that really have a lot of security. But this was a good story and could have been a tragedy, but thank goodness it was a great story.
You know what's so interesting about the story, Chris, is that there wasn't even a second thought of these guys getting up out of their seat and going for it. That tells me we are now at all-time high alert.
Exactly. I know they really just had a few moments to make a decision, and I think certainly it was their Marine training and that had a part to play in what they did. The split second timing that they had to do. If they had waited maybe a few other seconds, a minute or more, could have been a really bloodbath in there, and they could have been victims as well. But I think that was just a good story. The bravery of these three Marines prevented what could have been a huge mega terror attack.
Chris, do we know anything about the gunman? Is there any Islamic connection?
Well, it does seem to be. He's Moroccan-born. He lived in Spain. He lived in Belgium for a time. He lived in France. Apparently, he also went to Syria as well, and remains to be seen exactly what kind of either training or influence he had there. And it just opens up actually the hundreds and actually thousands of jihadis that have been influenced by ISIS, their propaganda, either online or actually being there in ISIS-controlled territory, or maybe al-Nusra or al-Qaeda. Any of these groups could have influenced somebody like him. And with an AK-47 and 300 rounds of ammunition, he could have done a lot of damage.
So what's the response in your part of the world that you're covering over there? Did this story get out? Were people aware of what happened here and what that may mean?
Very much so. I think a lot of people were following it over here. It was on the European news as well. I get to follow France 24 network sometime. That certainly was a major story there. A big sigh of relief for the French, because if you remember just a few months ago, the Charlie Hebdo attack in Paris, and that was a tragedy that really paralyzed that country for a couple of days. And they didn't want a repeat of that. And that's, I'm certain, why these three Americans, and I think there was a British a citizen as well that got the Legion of Honor, France's highest medal, and so this was a good story for France, and they literally dodged a bullet during this time.
Oregonian, right here from almost our backyard. Hey, listen, you used the term soft attack. How are you defining attacks?
Well, a soft target, something that really doesn't have a lot of security. If you've ever been on the European train system, many times you can get off and on from one country to another, from one stop to another. They don't have a lot of security necessarily. You don't have to go through a security check necessarily to get on the train. So that's what I mean by a soft target. Unlike an airport where there's a lot of levels of security, where if anybody's getting on a plane, they're going to have to pass through, several layers of security. The same thing could happen in the United States. Unfortunately, there are just a lot of places in free societies where somebody like this can take advantage of, the freedom of movement that we enjoy in the West and especially in the United States.
What's so interesting is the alert factor in some of these countries. I don't know what it is where you are right now and in America. I mean, I think we're aware of these things, but we don't seem to be taking serious the high alert. Maybe it's because we haven't seen an attack on American soil for a while, but are you concerned about that?
Yeah, in some ways. I think here in Israel, people are sort of used to being, having security. For example, I went to a parking lot today, and some security guard looked through my trunk before I go into the parking lot. So you're used to it here because it does happen, unfortunately, more frequently here. But I think people need to train themselves for this quote-unquote new normal, where jihadi wannabes or jihadists can go ahead and attack, just like Chattanooga, Tennessee, a few weeks ago. That was an unfortunate situation where 4 people died, and I think people need to be prepared for that. This guy Kazani from Morocco was under surveillance by the French, but they just couldn't keep track of him 24/7, and that's the hard thing. It's a daunting surveillance task for any of these security agencies, whether it's France or the United States, to keep track of these people. There's so many of them, hundreds and thousands. That was something the FBI director warned about a few months ago before Congress, that it's just hard for them to keep track of everybody there that's a potential threat.
Hey, let me switch your attention a little bit back to the Iran deal that, is still on the table. Congress hasn't come back from their summer vacation yet to really deal with it. But we are hearing of some key senators now, Democratic senators, stepping away from the president on this deal. How's the feel for that over there in Jerusalem?
Well, it's being closely looked here in Jerusalem, and I think this is sort of the last defense that that Israel is looking for is the United States Congress. The UN Security Council has already passed a resolution favoring this agreement. The Europeans seem to have on board right now. Britain just opens its embassy in Tehran just a couple of days ago. Many businesses from Germany, France, Spain are on their way to Iran to set up business. So perhaps the United States Congress is the last remaining body that can actually reject this deal. And it could have some impact if it happens. The U.S. sanctions are by far the toughest, and so it would be somewhat significant that if the United States Congress goes ahead and rejects this deal. I know Menendez from New Jersey and Schumer from New York have come out against this. It looks like there's going to have to be more Democratic senators that are going to have to come out against this if they're going to override a presidential veto. And just to add, Perry, we just last week, at the end of last week, what's called the secret agreement between the IAEA and Iran came out, and it had to do with a place called Parchin, which is a military site where it's suspected that Iran is developing a nuclear trigger for an atomic bomb. It's a very serious and dangerous possible military site. And the IAEA has agreed that Iran is going to go ahead and, examine it on its own to provide photos, videos, and environmental samples. And nobody from the IAEA is going to be there in person. Iran is basically going to be self-inspecting itself, and that's a very dangerous development.
What's so interesting about that, Chris, is that it's just ridiculous. The second deal is just ridiculous. I can't even believe that this is seeing the light of day. And wouldn't it be somewhat, isn't this treason that the president would have a side deal away from the approval of Congress?
It seems very disconcerting. Perhaps some people would say it's treasonous. But why would a representative, and I know this has been asked by some representatives, why should they be able to vote on something they can't even see? Certainly the other agreement, this called Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, is public. But why should they agree to secret agreements? And I think in the legislation that they have to vote on, it was agreed that any sort of deals would have to be made public, and so that the congressmen and the senators would have to know what they're voting on. And so this is very disconcerting. And just to add to that, Perry, just some of the agreements in the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, one of them stipulates, and I think this is very telling, that it envisage, and that's the word they use, that the P5+1 and Iran would see a day when the P5+1, the United States and the 6 world powers, would actually protect Iran's nuclear facilities, and it goes on to say, against sabotage. Now, sabotage is something that Israel's been accused of for years, that they have been trying to thwart Iran's nuclear facilities. And so it seems like a setup where the United States and these other world powers would be favoring Iran, protecting their nuclear sites, and actually coming against a nation like Israel.
All right, let me take a break here. When we come back, I have some more questions about this deal and what's happening there in Iran. So we'll be right back here in just a moment with Chris Matthews. By the way, DestinationJerusalemBook.com is where you can go to get his website and get all his information. That's Destination Jerusalem. Is there a dot? No, all right. DestinationJerusalemBook.com. We'll be right back with Chris Mitchell in just a minute.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Okay, we're back, and our special guest today is Chris Mitchell. Of course, you see him here on the Dove TV network because he's the host of Jerusalem Dateline, and we value greatly our partnership with CBN News. He is the Middle East Bureau Chief for CBN News. He's authored several books, and one of the websites that you can go and get more information about his books and what he does is at DestinationJerusalemBook.com. Chris, a couple of things here. I was reading on a couple of the websites this morning, and there seems to be a little bit of a parallel here. And the suggestion is this, that Iran already has the bomb. In other words, it might be in missile form, may not be the big one, but they now have in possession the capability of sending a missile with nuclear devices. What's the response there in Jerusalem or in Israel over all this?
Well, I was talking to an expert not too long ago, not here in Israel, actually in Washington. I was there about 2 weeks ago. Her name was Claire Lopez, former CIA operative, and she's now with the Center for Public Security. And she said it's really hard to believe that Iran doesn't already have a nuclear weapon. Now, whether or not they actually can put that on a missile remains to be seen. And that's why this military site at Parchin is so significant, because if they're actually miniaturizing a nuclear weapon. But her contention was that they already do have the bomb, and that's very possible. I mean, it was North Korea had the bomb before everybody knew it. And she made the point, which is very telling and very disconcerting in light of this agreement, is that any time since World War II, CIA and other Western intelligence agencies did not know when a country would go nuclear. That includes Russians, the Chinese, the Indians, the Pakistanis, the South Africans, and the North Koreans. And so it's very hard to believe that there's a lot that the Western intelligence agencies, perhaps even the Mossad here in Israel, that really don't know, and it's very likely that they already could have a nuclear device.
Given that information, and with the pending deals now on the table with Iran, and granted, neither one of them has been signed or okayed yet and gotten through progress, if in fact that they potentially already have the capabilities, and I would have to assume Israel intelligence being what it is, the best in the world, that there could be a preemptive strike before the deals are signed.
That's a possibility. In fact, that's been the subject of discussion here in Israel the last 3 days or so. And what brought it up is Ehud Barak, who's Israel's former defense minister. He came out, he's writing a book, and during the book, he was talking to the two men that are going to write the book about him, and he was doing recordings. Part of those recordings, he said in between 2010 and 2012, that as defense minister, there were 3 times when the Security Cabinet had to decide whether or not to have a preemptive strike against Iran. It's causing a lot of consternation among the political leadership, because a lot of people are saying this violates and exposes Israel's state secrets. Regardless of whether or not it is telling that in 3 instances in the last several years that Israel was at least considering it. It got to the cabinet, the Security Cabinet, where they had to make a decision to go ahead and strike Iran's nuclear facilities. It looks like they have been preparing for many, many years for this eventuality. And it's possible that before this deal strikes, and there's one other thing, Perry, that I'm sure is going into the calculus of Israeli military planners, is what's called the S-300 ground-to-air missile system. It's one of the most sophisticated in the world, and Russia has sold that to Iran. Right. It hasn't yet delivered it, but as soon as it gets delivered, or before it gets delivered, that could be another factor in whether or not Israel goes ahead and strikes Iran. Many people here say, yes, they will. Almost 47% of Israelis would favor a unilateral strike. Other people say Israel shouldn't do it. So there's divided opinions one way or the other here in Israel, but certainly they are preparing for that eventuality if necessary.
Well, wouldn't that preempt the obstruction clause inside the side deal? I mean, they wouldn't be guilty of that.
Well, exactly. I know they would, if they do it beforehand, that's one thing. If they do it afterwards, that really sets Israel against much of the rest of the world, especially the Europeans, obviously the United States, Russia, and China. So this deal really puts a big weight of responsibility on Israel, what it needs to do. It does remind me of something that I put in the book, Destination Jerusalem. In 2013, we went with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, along with other Israeli and foreign media, up to Moscow, and he met with Vladimir Putin. At the time, he was trying to convince Putin not to sign what was then an interim deal before this final deal with Iran. He failed in that attempt, but we had a chance to be in a background briefing, and I asked Netanyahu if he felt like he was sort of like Churchill was in the 1930s, and he said he did. He felt, Churchill at that time was railing and warning about Adolf Hitler and a rearmed Nazi Germany, and Netanyahu has for years been warning about a nuclear Iran. And so he said at that time that he would do whatever necessary to protect the Jewish race and the Jewish state. So I think he will hold true to his word.
Wow. Okay. A couple of things. Back to the strong arming in the Senate. One of the tactics that's being used is fascinating to me. Is this. They're saying that the odds of being wrong on this deal are far outweigh the odds of being right on this deal. Therefore, do you want this to be a part of your political legacy that you voted for something that's bound to fail? Now, I realize it's an emotional pressure, but it seems to be working on a few of these liberal senators.
A few. I know Menendez from New Jersey, he said that he didn't want his name on this deal. That's why he's opposing it. And I would think that any other congressman and woman or senator really needs to take this very seriously. I know Chuck Schumer from New York said that it was a matter of principle that he had to oppose this deal because he felt there were so many flaws in the deal itself. And hopefully many of the other people that are going to be voting on this will take this as a matter of principle. And I would add, Perry, because of all these instances, the terror attack in France, the deal with a nuclear Iran, obviously the shaking going on in the economic system right now, such a time to be praying for the peace of Jerusalem, for the country, the future of the United States of America, and the world for that matter. It seems like we're going through a real big shaking right now. Time to be looking up.
A big hearty amen. Chris, are a lot of these presidential candidates running over to Israel and having a meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu? I know a few were there. I don't know if there's a nod one way or the other, but I know some who are strongly allies with Israel want that to be on their resume, so to speak. Are you seeing an unusual amount of people showing up?
Not yet right now, but we did see Mike Huckabee here just about a week and a half ago. Unfortunately, I missed him. I was still in the United States with family, but he's been here a number of times, so it's not unusual to see him here. He's a very big supporter of Israel. He knows, I think, the situation here in Israel and the Middle East more than most of the other candidates, just because of his interest here and being here dozens of times. Actually, I think the first time he was here in 1973. I know many of the candidates were embroiled in the campaign, but I would expect almost every serious candidate to come here within the next several months, and certainly during the campaign. I would expect Donald Trump to be here as well. And so it's sort of like, I think, one of the things they need to check on their campaign box before any of these major campaigns that are coming up, any votes.
Well, right now, Trump has said, he's for Israel, but we haven't seen anything that solidifies that. And I think that does have people concerned.
Yeah, I understand that, and remains to be seen exactly how he's going to come out. But I think, at least from what I've heard so far, that he would be a strong supporter of Israel. He said he would support the Christians in the Middle East, too, what they're going through. But I think almost every candidate on the Republican side, anyway, I think would be strongly pro-Israel, and we'll see how that plays out.
All right, let me step into a realm that I'm not comfortable with, and that is... there's a lot going on, talks about the September dates and blood moons, and now with all of these other things that are going on with the potential preemptive strike, any correlation in your thinking?
Well, I can say that a lot of people are wondering about this. In fact, when I was back in the States and I was in northern Michigan, that's where my wife is from, and we were visiting with a lot of family and friends, and I know that was a topic of conversation for a lot of us. Is there something going to happen in September? What about the year of the Shemitah? What about the 4 blood moons? All these things seem to converging in September. I would say that it does seem very interesting that these shaking going on in the stock market and the markets around the world and the economies like China is happening almost on time for some of the people like Jonathan Cahn. I know he's probably one of the most well-known, who's written the book called The Harbinger, and obviously the mystery of the Shemitah. So it's very interesting. I think people need to be watching and praying about what's happening. Some people may disagree, some people may agree, but I think we need to be watching what's happening in the world. We need to be spending a time in prayer, and we need to be watching the signs of the times, because Jesus did say there would be birth pangs, there would be shakings, earthquakes, and there seems to be financial earthquakes going on right now. And what I write in the book, Destination Jerusalem, is that because of what's happening, because of terror attacks that are happening in a train on its way to Paris, or what's happening in Chattanooga, Tennessee, we really do, one of the things we need to be doing is watching and praying. We need to be drawing close to the Lord, drawing close to our families, to our churches, and we need to be looking up. And so I think that's, regardless if you agree or disagree with all the things that are happening, it's time to be watching the signs of the time and be preparing. There could be dangerous and dark days. I think 2 authors describe perhaps the days we're going into. Charles Dickens, he said it was the best of times, the worst of times. Isaiah said, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you, and deep darkness the people." So I think we're going to see great light, great darkness. It's a time to be heading to the light, hiding ourselves necessarily with the Lord, with Jesus.
Amen. On the Jewish calendar, what is significant in September? Is it the Feast of the Trumpets? What is it?
A number of things. In fact, they're already in a significant time right now. It's called the month of Elul, and before the High Holy Days, before the Shana Tova, which is the Jewish New Year, it's a time of introspection. In fact, many Jews are reciting Psalm 27 every day during this month of Elul. The first thing we're going to see is the Rosh Hashanah, and then we're going to see the 10 days of awe. Actually, many Jews believe that's a day when God judges the world, and they try to make right for themselves between them and the Lord, and also with other people. That ends in Yom Kippur, the High Holy Day, the Day of Atonement, and then following that will be the Feast of Tabernacles, and that's the Feast of Tabernacles, where they celebrate the fact that God tabernacled with the Israelites in the desert. And on the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles, there'll be the 4th blood moon, the one that has come, and this will be the 4th in a series that was on the first day of Passover in 2014, and then the Feast of Tabernacles in 2014, again in 2015 in Passover, and now the 4th one. We'll have to be watching and waiting to see what happens.
It's just too much to ignore. Back to the percentages just for a moment, Chris. You said earlier that most Israelis, or 47%, would be for a preemptive strike. The rest would not be. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I said. And I think Israelis are certainly, they feel like they're on the front lines. Just after this agreement was signed, we went on the streets of Jerusalem, and they take seriously the words of Iran. Iran says that they want to destroy the little Satan, which is Israel, and they want to destroy the great Satan, which is the United States. It's somewhat disconcerting, ironic, however you want to describe it, that the United States would be sitting down at the table with a country that is calling for its destruction in the streets of Tehran. And they haven't seemed to curb their rhetoric, even just in the last few days, whether it's the Ayatollah or other proxies. Hassan Nasrallah from Hezbollah, which is an Iranian-backed group, he called for the destruction of Israel. They just released a video the other day where an Islamic Iranian army was going to, invade Jerusalem. So people here in Israel, they take Iran's words seriously and preparing.
All right. Where I was going with that, and my last question is, what is the feel among just Israelis about the proposed planned deal between the United States and Iran? What are those percentages?
They say, I think there's about 70% that don't trust Iran. So I think you could say that there's a high percentage of Israelis that don't trust this deal. And I think that they see it as flawed and a way. If you look at the deal itself, if you read it, which I have, that you could see so many flaws, so many loopholes. And there's two things. First of all, if they just wait 10 years or 15 years, they can continue their uranium enrichment at a reduced level. They can continue their research and development. So they could, after 10 years, when this agreement is over in certain sectors, go ahead and get a nuclear bomb. The other thing is that, and this was pointed out to me by Claire Lopez, since 1988, they've had a clandestine nuclear program. And what's to believe that that has stopped even with this agreement? And that's something this agreement doesn't even do. And not least to say that it has $150 billion in promised sanctions relief that could be spread to Iran and all their proxies throughout the Middle East, like Hezbollah, like the Houthis in Yemen, like Hamas, and that would make some of these terror groups flush with cash. Who knows what could happen? Again, just a reminder of how important it is to be praying during these days.
Chris, you're a delight. Thank you, friend. We value greatly the relationship. And let me just say to our viewers and listeners, you can go to destinationjerusalembook.com. Look for his program here on the Dove Television Network, and that's Jerusalem Dateline. And let me encourage you to get a copy of the book. Again, that's Destination Jerusalem. So go to the website, destinationjerusalembook.com. Thank you, Chris. God bless you, pal. Keep up the good work.
God bless you, Perry. Great to be with you.
All right. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Welcome back, and hey, what a delight to have back with us Meeke Addison. She's the Director of Communication for the Urban Family Talk. It's a division of American Family Association, and Meeke is one of those great warriors, and what a delight to have you. How you doing? Good to see you.
It's great to be with you again, Perry. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. Boy, a lot to talk to you about, but first of all, help us understand what's going on with Chick-fil-A and the Denver airport.
Well, this is Christianity under attack. That's the short answer to that question. Christianity under attack, religious freedom under attack in this country. So what you have is what was like a 7-year deal kind of in the making that Chick-fil-A was going to set up a concession stand in the Denver airport. No big deal. People want to catch food or get food as they wait to catch their planes and things like that, you know. But here you have the Denver City Council saying, well, we have some concerns about Chick-fil-A setting up a concession stand in our airport because of Dan Cathy's position on homosexuality, in which they are saying this is Chick-fil-A's position on homosexuality. You remember a few years back, Dan Cathy saying that he believed biblically that marriage is between one man and one woman, which is true. That is what marriage is, the union between one man and one woman. Well, as a result of that, and many of your viewers might remember the National Chick-fil-A Day where there was an attempt to boycott Chick-fil-A by liberal homosexuals who said, you know, this was hate speech. How dare Dan Cathy have an independent thought? How dare he publicly communicate his deeply held religious beliefs? And so they planned a boycott. Well, that backfired, and Chick-fil-A had what probably was like its single highest amount in sales as people all across the country flooded Chick-fil-A, which I think people were probably going to go to Chick-fil-A anyway. That was just a great opportunity to do that, to say, no, we support Dan Cathy's right to state his views publicly, even though he owns and runs a company. So what Denver City Council is saying is that we don't know that we want to approve Chick-fil-A being able to set up a concession stand in the Denver International Airport because of their quote unquote position on homosexuality. homosexuality. And in fact, if I could just read this, I wanted to get this verbatim for your viewers here, Perry, because there was one city council member who, and I don't know if I'm going to get her name right, her last name, but she's the first openly gay city council member, and her name is Robin. It looks like maybe Nike. I may be saying her last name incorrectly, but this is what she said worried her about Chick-fil-A being able to set up concessions in the airport. She said, quote, she was concerned about a local franchise generating corporate profits used to fund and fuel discrimination. Now, what our viewers, your viewers need to know, what people of faith need to know, is that not once has Chick-fil-A ever espoused any discriminatory practices in their hiring practices. You've never seen that. In fact, not one organization, not one establishment, that when we talk about being out in the public square and providing goods and services, are saying that we're not going to serve homosexuals. And Chick-fil-A has never said that they discriminate against homosexuals. Dan Cathy simply said, which is his right to do, he said that he believed marriage is between one man and one woman. As a result of that, several city council members in Denver have a problem with this and have made that known.
Ask you this, Meeke, wouldn't this be a reverse discrimination suit? In other words, it would be no different that if I was an apartment owner and I didn't want to rent an apartment to you because you're black, and now they won't rent space for me to sell chicken because I have a belief.
That's exactly right. And that's what we're looking at today. And this is sort of becoming the norm in our culture. You say, you know, we are supportive and we are tolerant of all the views that we like. But whenever we are faced with a view that we dislike in the public square, we seek to shut it down. We seek to silence those opposing views. So now what we're talking about is we are talking about the policing of thought and deeply held religious beliefs. We're not talking about someone who says, I refuse to hire homosexuals. This is not what we're talking about. We're not talking, because listen, and here written in the agreements when people set up concession stands in the Denver International Airport, the city council knows this, by the way, but written in the agreement is that they will adhere to all of their employment practices, so they cannot discriminate against someone, and now included in that, based on their sexual orientation. Now, listen, but that's not what people want you to be thinking about. What people want you to think is that if you simply think that homosexuality goes against God's will, if you simply express that, then you must be homophobic, you must hate people, and you must want to ostracize them. So preemptively, what liberal people do is ostracize Christians. We are seeing this all across the country. And listen, it's not going to go away. So the remedy to this is not for Christians to become more quiet about our convictions, to become more silent about what we believe. Because keep in mind, that's what the objective is. The objective is to silence the Christian, to eradicate our views, our deeply held Christian beliefs from the public square. So the remedy to that is for us to be even louder when we talk about what we believe. If you as a business owner, you have these deeply held convictions, you don't check that at the door when you go to run your business. And this is what liberals are wanting from us.
Well, this is cultural bullying at its highest form.
That's exactly right. And you're talking about the people that are supposed to be the most tolerant. You're talking about the people who are pushing for equality. It's so utterly ridiculous. This is cultural bullying. And I think you worded that perfectly. That's what we're seeing here. So the question now is for the body of Christ. You know, do we just have our own opinions about marriage? Or do we believe that what our convictions are come from the inerrant, eternal word of God? Our deeply held convictions, should they be checked at the door? Should they be checked at our churches? Or do we have the right in this country to bring our beliefs with us everywhere we go? I mean, you think about it. What is on trial here now is our First Amendment right, our freedom to not only worship freely, right? But to practice our religion freely. So that means that we don't check what we believe at our church doors. We don't check it at home. But you would have liberals tell you that because we don't like what you're saying, you have to keep quiet and reserve that for Sunday morning, 10 a.m.
You're a preacher. Can I take a break? I want to switch gears with you because I think you've nailed it so perfectly. First of all, folks, we need to be praying for Chick-fil-A and through this whole deal. Secondly,
Absolutely.
I think that this Denver City Council is taking 2 weeks to look at this. That's plenty of time for us to ask God's favor in this whole deliberation. When we come back, Meeke, I want to go over to Planned Parenthood with you. I know you're very passionate about that. Video number 7 came out. It's so unbelievable. It's hard to even talk about it on the air. But we had a great nationwide rally over the weekend. Thousands turned out for it. The momentum's heading in the right direction. I want to get your views on that. We'll be right back with Meeke Addison in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back, and one of the great warriors. I just love this gal and what she does. We have with us today Meeke Addison. She's the Director of Communication for Urban Family Talk. It's a division of American Family Association. By the way, you can go to afa.net and get a lot. It is a tremendous resource. A lot of the things that we struggle with and argue with and deal with in our religious freedoms, AFA is right on the cutting edge of it. So you go to afa.net. What a great resource. All right, Meeke, I want to come over back to Planned Parenthood. There's a lot going in the right direction. Over the weekend, even in our own backyard here, we had the largest turnout of picketing of Planned Parenthood on Saturday ever, and it seems to be growing in momentum. I am frustrated, however, that the leadership in the Congress, somebody's not stopping the train and saying, wait a minute. We got a lot of problems in this country, but we better solve this one first. And it just doesn't seem to be there, even in light of these videos coming out. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, you know, I think that is something that we need to be talking about, especially Christian conservatives, because sometimes I think what we feel like is a sense of security. We say, well, you know, conservatives have the House and they have the Senate. It's just a matter of votes. What we're quickly realizing is that there are some people who say that they are conservatives, but really you look at their voting record and you look at the politicking that happens behind the scenes, and it's not so. So it's really important for the average citizen like you and like myself. It's really important for us to look our elected officials as much as we can in the eye and say, hey, where do you fall on this issue? How are you planning to vote in regards to defunding Planned Parenthood? That's a straightforward question. You can't sidestep that. You can't, you know, because what we have, some of our elected officials, they want to be able to say, well, we gave it a go and we just couldn't get it passed. Well, really, when you look behind the scenes, they know full well that they were not going to be able to get this legislation passed. They knew that. They had an opportunity to get it passed before this last time that defunding Planned Parenthood failed, and they didn't take it. And so what I'm saying to concerned citizens, concerned Christians, is that we are obligated, because we have given these people these jobs. We have elected them. Basically, we have given them their jobs. So we have a right and an obligation to hold them accountable. They represent us. They're supposed to be voting according to our convictions because we've put them there. So now we need to put the pressure on them, and we need to say, do you have plans to push the defunding of Planned Parenthood? Perry, we're talking about $500 million, $500+ million given to Planned Parenthood, taxpayer monies. This is what we're talking about. So we're talking about Christians, just like you, just like me, paying for the destruction of babies. Now, Planned Parenthood would push back on that, and Planned Parenthood would say, well, no federal dollars can go towards abortion, so that portion of the money doesn't go towards actually killing babies. They wouldn't use those terms. But how do you know that? How do you divide that out? Well, listen, everybody on the payroll, you're all complicit in the taking of innocent life. So from the person who cleans up the parking lot to the person who's ripping babies to shreds, you're all being paid by federal taxpayer dollars. It has to stop. Concerned citizens, especially Christians, have to be appalled.
Not to mention the fact that a lot of that money that goes through Planned Parenthood turns right around and goes back into the coffers of a politician.
Absolutely, because we're talking about lobbyists. We're talking about it takes money to make money. So that's Planned Parenthood's mantra as well. So we take all of these federal dollars and we're using this money so that we can keep lobbying our position. But listen, there are people who would hear this discussion right now, and they're well-meaning people, and they would say Planned Parenthood does more than provide abortions. They would say Planned Parenthood is helping women. I would submit to you this. There are thousands of women care centers all across this country who provide the types of services that Planned Parenthood wants you to focus on while not providing abortions, while not killing and dismembering babies. So this is really sort of a straw man argument. Do you really want to see health care for women in this country dismantled? Well, listen, Planned Parenthood is not single-handedly providing for that. You know, we've got to be able to have this honest discussion. And we kind of drew some parallels in the last segment, Perry. We talked about, you know, what is this reverse discrimination that we're talking about in this country. Listen, if you look at the history of Planned Parenthood, and you look at the desire of Margaret Sanger, her desire was to eradicate Black people in this country. We were undesirable. OK, so that is the mission. That is the aim of Planned Parenthood. And some people would say, well, even if that was how this organization was founded, that's not what they're about today. Really? Then I would say, what do you do with the fact that 79% of Planned Parenthood clinics that provide abortions are in Black and Hispanic neighborhoods within a 2-mile radius? So within walking distance, what do you do with that information? Planned Parenthoods are in areas or in populations that they want to eradicate. And listen, people should be disturbed because not only are we talking about the taking of innocent life, not only are we talking about dismembering innocent life, we're talking about selling these babies. So now what we know is that not only does Planned Parenthood want to annihilate what they consider unusable in culture and society, but we know they have an even greater vested interest because they want to sell those body parts. This should outrage the church. We should be rallied. This is not a political issue. We shouldn't be confused about this just because it's become political. For us in the body of Christ, this is a moral issue. We wouldn't look away at someone murdering a person walking down the street. We would demand justice. We would cry out for help. We should do the very same thing for the most innocent and vulnerable among us. These babies that daily are being slaughtered in our country.
Mickey, you touched the real nerve with me, and I'm grateful for it. So I want to reach into your heart and squeeze it for a moment. What can we say to the faith community to embrace this issue now? Now. This is the one. I've always said that if we can get the life issue straight, I believe God would begin to bless America again. But until we get this one straight, all these other issues we're dealing with, basically, as serious as they are, they're somewhat incidental as it relates to the issue of life. Because of all the things God created, it was the human that he created in his own image. And if we don't get this one right, we're just going to blow the opportunity. The other thing is that it seems to me that God has reopened this and given us these videos to get back into this argument. Are we going to seize the moment? And number two, what can you say to the faith community? We can't turn our back on this, and yet I'm seeing a lot of pastors saying, no, it's political, we're going to leave it alone.
That's deception. And I think it's most disheartening when you consider that pastors have taken that position. And you're not exaggerating that, Perry. That's not anecdotal. We're talking about pastors who have specifically said, you know, this is not our issue. This is a political fight. What can we do? We have Roe v. Wade. So we just look in the other direction. We also had Dred Scott. Do you just look in the other direction? No, listen, I think what the church needs to come face to face with is the reality that we have blood on our hands. When you think about this, and you can call it whatever you want. You can call it compassion because you don't want to challenge a mother not to abort her baby. You can call it understanding because you don't want to address the effects of abortion for fear that someone in your congregation has had one. Well, I've got news for you. There's more than one person in your congregation who's had an abortion. There's several women The statistics prove this. There's several women in your congregation who've had abortions and are suffering silently because you think you're being compassionate by not addressing this. But worse still, we would rather look like the body of Christ than act like the body of Christ. What do you do with someone who has found herself pregnant and says, I don't know what to do? You encourage her to choose life for her baby. I don't care what it looks like. And listen, historically, and we don't talk about this. Historically, we have had well-meaning Christian families seek out abortion as a quote unquote option for their daughter. Why? Because they don't want their family name to be tarnished, because they don't want to be embarrassed by what their daughter did. I would say this to you. You have blood on your hands. Our pastors who don't speak out, our pastors who don't get involved because they want to say that this is political. We're talking about life and death. In this discussion, there are no politics. Yes, we have Roe versus Wade. And so, yes, this is sort of turned into a political issue. We have political parties that take their sides and they have made it political. But what we are talking about at the core is we are talking about sin. We're talking about murder. We're talking about the blood of millions on our hands. And the church has been complicit. The church has been silent. And sometimes, especially in situations like this, silence sounds an awful lot like agreement.
Wow. You are an inspiration. I don't know what else to say. I just think it's our time. I think God, in his mercy, said, I'm going to have these videos and give you a chance to redeem the subject. And I don't know if we're going to do it. I hope and pray that we do. I will say this. It has brought a lot of people out of the shadows and now standing up on the side of life. There are states now defunding Planned Parenthood. There are a lot of good things going on now as a result of this exposure. And I would hope that we just get on the bandwagon and ride this one all the way through to the end.
The momentum is on our side, Perry. The momentum is on our side. The momentum is on the side of the pro-lifers like never, ever before. We have a moment, as you so eloquently said, we've been given an opportunity by the Lord to correct this ship, to right it. If we miss it, judgment, we already deserve it. It's only God's grace and mercy that he would withhold it from us. We already deserve judgment. But I believe, as you said, that the Lord has given us another opportunity to get this right. We should not miss it. The momentum is on our side. All we've got to do is keep our foot down on the gas. 2.5 years, the Center for Medical Progress has spent compiling this information and pulling back the medical curtain on this destructive industry. Think about that. We have an industry of murder in this country. It just should not be.
Mickey, thank you. And people want to correspond with you. The best way is through afa.net.
Absolutely. Absolutely. AFA.net. We love to connect with people who are concerned about what's happening in culture. We provide regular action alerts where you can get involved and take action on those things that rail against morality in this country. AFA.net.
40 seconds. Tell us about Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk is a ministry division of the American Family Association. It's a unique opportunity to speak directly into the Black community about issues that we should care about and know about, but largely we turn away because we feel like, I don't have anything to do with that, but we've got lots to do with it. So that's our initiative to get conservative principles into the Black community. That website is urbanfamilytalk.com.
urbanfamilytalk.com. And then, of course, with all the resources that AFA has, and believe me, there's a ton of it there for you. You can go to afa.net. Nikki, you're an inspiration. Keep up the good work. And let's stay connected because we got a lot to deal with in the days ahead. And we love you and value our relationship. So let's keep at it, okay?
Absolutely. Bless you, Perry.
Thank you. Okay. Well, again, let me just give you those websites. You can go to urbanfamilytalk.com. if you want to get directly involved with what she's doing there in bringing information to the Black community. And then, of course, AFA, I can't say enough about American Family Association. There is a ton of information at their website. It's one of the great resource websites for all of these issues that we're battling. AFA.net. Go there. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.